Sure, we're running this, like even to think about what's involved in the hybrid presentation and the live stream, it's just a lot of moving pieces.
That's something.
No, under pressure, like go now.
Sean, you don't need the two different connection softwares, man.
Yeah, you need your iPhones.
We're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. This is much better for me.
Okay.
This leave.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. It is 7:02 on June 2nd, and I'll call this meeting of the Peaslee Building Committee to order. This is a hybrid meeting, and pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting will be conducted via remote means and in person. Welcome, Jake. Members of the public who wish to access remotely may do so using the Zoom link provided on this agenda. Thank you all for being here. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from May 19th.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Tristan and seconded by Jake that we approve the minutes from May 19th. Is there any discussion? And hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Starting with Lauren Bailey,
Yes.
Rob Tomasetti,
Yes.
Mike Tejan,
Aye.
Tristan Bezant,
Yes.
Jake Ruskowski,
Yes.
Sean Durkin,
Yes.
Kelly Gannett, yes, Kevin Warsh,
Yes.
and Erica Hall says yes, the motion carries. Thanks for everyone who's joining us. We have committee members here tonight. We also have some members from the town of Northborough. Stephanie Bacon has joined, as well as Jason Little made the long commute down the stairs to be here with us. We also have members from our OPM, PMA, Alphabet Soup. Thank you for being here tonight, and members from our design team at Flansburgh. Thank you for joining us. So our owner's project manager update, I'd like to say that you members of the committee have been very, very busy in the past 14 days since we last met, because you have generated several requests for information, which you forwarded through me, and I logged with the OPM and the designer, and they've been busy addressing questions. So I would like to take a minute and just go through the document list that we have amassed of memos and documents in response to questions. Make sure that committee members feel like they received the information they needed and that questions were addressed. Starting with questions around cost. So we had two detailed questions about cost estimating and sort of memoranda that were provided in response to that. So I would ask members of the committee, when it comes to the cost estimating, are there any additional questions? Do you feel like, do you understand the documents that were provided in response to questions? And that's open for any committee members.
Erica?
Yes, Tristan.
So I appreciate the team getting back to us. I'm one of the folks that had a longer list of questions. Just comparing, I think the focus of mine was looking at understanding the difference between some of the B series options that were presented, and looking at trying to understand the delta or lack of delta between the different options. And I guess in general, I feel like some of the answers didn't fully address the concerns that were brought forward, that perhaps there's some more to hash out or to sift through, whatever you want to, however you want to present it. Because I think as I went through the detailed line item estimate, there were some things in it. The one that stuck out most to me was site work. There's some other things in the building as well, but the site work cost was roughly 9 million across all B series options. But there's quite a difference in the scope of what we're looking at, even conceptually, between, say, a building at the back of the site versus maintaining playfields at the back, keeping the building at the front. So the quantities didn't change at all for asphalt, drainage, off-haul, a lot of these things that really have a big impact on, why we might choose one option versus another. But that's something that I felt was not addressed because it does can affect how we consider the different options. There were some other things in the building too, dealing with walls, demo, masonry. And I don't know that this is the time or place to really get into that level of detail, but I didn't think they were really fully understood or perhaps not addressed.
Thank you.
I have a more general observation or question.
If it's related to site work.
No, not yet.
Okay, then I'm gonna, let's
Okay.
see, is there a response or a time, you wanna respond now or later? Just in what I heard is a question regarding site work for
Yeah.
across the suite of options.
Absolutely, and like I appreciated it was a very diligent question we got back, and so we took it serious. We went back to our estimator and looked at all that, they responded. But the one thing I do want to clarify is regardless of its option, 1B through B4. Optically on the site plan, it looks like we're not touching an area maybe to the north, but we are because all the B series has a geothermal system. So we are impacting within the site proper. They're all being impacted. They all have the same 145 parking spaces. They all have the same, relatively, except some do expand out when you look at the impervious pavement for the loop road expanding over. So that is a nuance between the various options. But if you look at some of the options, I'll say as B2, where it looks like we're not touching the play fields in the back. That's for the geothermal field that's being developed. So we are basically touching every inch of the site. So the overall site plan, that whole, I'll say the site proper, without going out to the neck, which I call where we have.
The plants the ball fields off to the south.
Every inch is being touched, regardless of the option. And then optically, I think on the site plan, sometimes it looks, this is what we have today, so we're not touching it. We are going there. So we did talk to PNC, our estimator, and we said, we had these comments. And I think it comes down to the amount of, roadway impervious, because we know we're obviously touching those areas. They responded, same thing, this is PDP, it's magnitude cost estimating.
Right.
And they looked at your comments. I spent the last week and a half talking to them because it's serious, because that was really important that you call that out. And the only thing I'll say is overall, every inch is being touched.
Yep.
They at this point in PDP, because we're in the middle of doing the PSR estimate, the next round, they hone in a little bit. And I want to say from their perspective, they feel like they evaluated them, equally with importance, but it's based on their institutional knowledge of working on hundreds of MSBA projects. And there are definitely nuances between it. I don't know if it's gonna tilt the dial too much, but they are honed in because of those comments. So on this next round, I think you're gonna see your comments incorporated.
Yeah,
a little bit better.
Yeah, those are some of the things I would expect, even if we are drilling wells and redoing playgrounds. That's a much different scope than if we're changing cut and fill elevations, prepping for foundations, and doing a complete perimeter loop road with associated drainage, site lighting, pavement mark. There's a lot of difference between those two. So I would expect to see a delta widen out. I wouldn't expect the exact same numbers for yardage for square footage of asphalt, drainage, those are some big ticket items that.
Right.
Are honestly presented as some of the reasons we might favor this option over the other, less site disturbance. So I understand drilling wells, but that's a different scope than building a parking lot.
Yeah, 100%, and so we've, everyone's kind of on notice to make sure, like, when we do this next PSR estimate, they're considering all that. But where you see in addition to the north, there is a considerable amount of fill because it really sits in a bowl. So in the estimate, you will see the yardage for like importing some fill to compensate for that. So they are looking at all the consultants from civil to landscape to structural did consider all that in our baseline narratives. And part of the process is just getting to know the project, and PDP is that getting to know the project. They hone it in during PSR, so we expect those numbers to be more honed in. And then, but I don't think that the delta between on the site work, they could shift. And it's something obviously seriously needs considered. But we will come back with the PSR estimates, and I do think it's going to address a lot of your questions.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna see if there's other comments specific to the cost before we moved on to the safety and the Lincoln Street comparison. And then if nobody else, I'll come back if you have more. Sean?
I just say in general, when I look at retaining walls and the associated costs, when I deal with any project, especially with kids, I think we're better off softening the grade in terms of site work than building retaining walls. And to me, they're more of a hazard and more of a obstacle than. So I think that's something to look at just in general. I don't know what cost savings is, if it's huge or not, but
Yeah.
even for something as simple as snow removal is a lot easier to push without a retaining wall. So,
No, I agree, and I think if you go to the Peaslee site and you look over, it looks relatively flat.
no, I know it's
But
bad.
it's not.
I know.
And so you do need to negotiate that, and that negotiation, like, I think with the PDP, we said, yes, let's put some retaining walls in here.
Yeah.
To get the cost. And I think that's something that when we develop the project, whichever option it becomes, we're gonna be cautious about that, because even with stormwater retention. I think one thing with the Peaslee School site right now is we're looking at, plus minus 50 parking spaces, a bus drop off, it needs to be corrected. So you see a lot of pavement, you see a lot of, we want to separate buses from parent drop off queuing. And so that's all those components that we're thinking about right now, still as a concept.
Yeah.
And then as we develop it, we look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 feet of grade. The PDP, yes, we put a retaining wall in there. It's almost saying, hey, we have to come back, revisit this and see if we can do it naturally with the grade.
Yeah.
So that's part of the process, because the civil engineers, the landscape architects and the architects, we want to give you the most, economically feasible but functional product at the end of the day.
Did the soil tests that you did, I know they weren't too specific, did they indicate it's mostly sand and gravel?
Standard base footing, so there's nothing exotic out there. But the thing is, within the back, we do want to elevate that back portion if there's an addition there. If it goes to having play fields,
Yeah.
We can kind of work with that. But when we look at the groundwater table, it still needs to kind of come up a little bit, but overall, it's pretty sound. So our geotechnical engineers who came out in December, who did their initial tests, you have standard spread footings, so there's nothing exotic being put into this site.
Any other feedback regarding cost?
Well, just how the retaining wall too, I think especially In North Groveland right now, you hear retaining wall, you think of the 50-foot fire station retaining wall, which we're not doing. It's gonna be like it would be lower, like a small retaining wall.
Yeah, we're negotiating between 3 feet here.
Yeah, so
A
it's not
couple
like-
feet here with the gradient, so the way, when you see a retaining wall within this graphic, we're talking about 4 feet here to kind of soften the edge where it's like the most important. And
But I
then-
see what you're, I see what you're saying.
But that doesn't mean, when we look at these floor plans, you look at the blue kind of new addition, it doesn't mean that can't be massaged.
Yeah.
And then we start taking into consideration like reducing, because retaining walls a lot of money, and we know from a benchmark, you do not get reimbursed with the site as much as you'd like. The MSBA provides reimbursement for a certain percentage. That's enough to get your parking lot in there.
Mhm.
Maybe your walkways. And then it's capped because they're treating all these schools throughout the municipality, whether it's an urban or you're in a rural area, as the same. So our number one goal is to understand how to balance your site costs. And I think some of the comments we had, kind of when you're honing into Tristan, was site costs, because that's your number one hit. If your site costs are high, it's on the district.
Mhm.
And so reducing the site costs is our number one priority. I get it, there's the physical infrastructure of building, it's like, oh, there's a new building and that should look like that's where all the costs is going. It's
Nobody
the
sees
site.
the money that's after it's there.
Nobody sees it 100%, and we recognize that, and most of our conversations during, and I don't wanna, again, schematic design, we've really honed into what you can be reimbursed for and what you can't. There's a cap on the building, whether the building is, 75,000 square feet, or potentially less as we go into the next phase, maybe this way to hone in some of that square footage to bring it down. It's the site. The site is where all your money is, and that's unpredictable because when you send it out to bid, our estimators, they're looking at 100 different projects that they currently have. And so will PMA, and they need to look at where the trades are building their like focus on, and it could be all like, oh, you have a geothermal project, so we're gonna, amp that up a little bit, or it could be you're heavy on retaining walls. So that's something we're gonna be conscious about, but what I wanna tell like this committee is the schematic design phase is where the final step into locking down the budget. The PDP phase is everybody just kind of getting, the temperature, understanding what's requested. The PSR hones in a little bit more, and then the schematic design, all those comments that were sent, that's what we focus on. And we will heavily focus on the site work. Now, we use as a benchmark, knowing for this project about 145 parking spaces. We looked at the schools that we did between 300 enrollment to 450 enrollment. And we kind of came into the sweet spot of 145 parking spaces. That's something that we're gonna obviously vet with the district to see if that's reasonable. We have the loop road, which I know is, always supported by the local fire and police. I think that's a good safety measure to build in. So what we're doing is, when you see those site plans with the impervious pavement, you might look at parking in a road. I look at stormwater infiltration. That's where the money comes in. And so if we can reduce the amount of impervious pavement, therefore it starts reducing the amount of underground stormwater detentions that you have to release the water when you have the storms, when you have all that. But to your comment, with retaining walls, we'll look at different ways that underground stormwater retention system, which is based on, state code, et cetera. We'll see if there's other ways that we can take some of the manufactured stormwater kind of retention that it does, and we'll see if we can do it naturally. That's also a way to save costs. We're just not at that level now.
Yeah.
But we know where we're heading.
Thank you. Lauren?
Thank you so much. So since we're talking about cost, I was curious in learning more about the square footage of the building and whether, is it now or in the next phase, the schematic design, where we may be looking at cutting square footage for cost savings?
Yep, I'll respond to that. So right now, there's the MSBA default template that treats every municipality the same. And then there's aspects that relate to your delivery, such as special education and core academic. And so there is opportunity in the next phase to begin to kind of sharpen the pencil. But right now, your square footage is not that far off from the MSBA default. There's some requests that make your program work, and that's what you have right now in the district. So we will be able to kind of whittle down to the bare essentials of what you need. But when you see the MSBA default template, it does not mean that that's what you should work to, because you have programs right now that are unique to Northborough that you have to incorporate into this project. So 100%, the square footage can be reduced, and square footage is money. So you might have a space that's 500 square feet that might be unique to your district that you need now, that you're functioning now. But with the MSBA, they take that 500 square feet, they times it by a 1.5 multiplier, and they may or may not support that in your reimbursement. So the reimbursement on a lot of these components is really important. We traditionally see special education being 100% supported if you're over on that. Because again, special education is so important right now at Peaslee. You're incredibly resourceful, but you're well deficient on state standards for MSBA default template. And there's great programs that you have right now that are supported within this program. But there's nothing here that's, I will say the towel has already been wrung out in the first phase, the PDP phase, and then it will happen again during the next phase.
Thank you.
Can I just want
Jake?
to add something, this is site related. It's not a good thing that we're touching every square inch of the site, it's a horrible thing. I mean, it just, that means we're spending $1 on every square inch of the site. We're spending money on it, and I don't think it's that we need to. It's something that, that we need to really work through, like, where are we gonna save? I would rather spend money on the building and the inside of the building than thinking about, this glorious road that goes around it. I've said it before, I find it to be just a complete waste of resources to do these circular roads. And you just look at the costs that it just snowballs with that. You do have a lot of grading there. I mean, I've spent 10 years at that site. I have kids that are in it. And it's gonna be a shock to everyone's system too, when they find out that you're just completely blowing away everything that's there now in the back of the space. It's not a point of like we should be looking at where we can save and not touch everything. And the fact that we're just so blatantly, that's just, we're gonna touch it all, it's just concerning to me.
I don't think that was the statement that I was expressing. I feel that with what we've been instructed to do is look at the geothermal, so that's gonna take that whole back of the site.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's something that
But we have to always look at it.
why are we spending, because this is not just the geothermal, but it's, it's the site work that you're doing there. And I'm looking at the numbers here and they're telling me that, you have to add $1 million to the rooftop units weights because of the geothermal and things like that. It's, you really gotta, I know it's early, but it's just like,
So when it comes
it
from
gives
the
me pause already, the site, the whole site that we're doing.
and I appreciate that. I think when we look at your projects like proper, your building is in smack dab in the middle of the site. I would say from a life safety perspective, putting a loop road is priority number one. Because
But the building's been 60 years of
I
successful operation.
add a loop road around the building, regardless if it's paved or you pave it to a certain thing and do stone dust. Having an emergency responder being able to access 360 of your building is, I would say, a high priority from a safety perspective. And we did have a memo from the Northborough Police Chief that echoed that as well. And when you go into a partnership with the MSBA, They are going to look for the low hanging fruit. Is it a safe building to access in the final? So I know when you're looking at your building, and there's always ways, because we are, and I will say from Plansburg's perspective, we want to have a light touch on the ground plane, 100%. But we also want to deliver a building that is safe for your emergency responders to access. So regardless of the loop road surrounding, that's kind of what I was getting at. We need to take a deep dive into the amount of parking spaces. Right now you have 50. Okay, you have 50. There is a level of pickup and drop off when you negotiate your 50 parking spaces with the amount of buses that you have dropping off and parent drop off. Everything's kind of congested in the front of the school. From a safety perspective, that has to be addressed. And that's not just the deficiency of the building, the age of the building. As being good stewards of how you're going to progress with this project, you have to address it, not just from a 50 parking spaces, a congested parent pickup drop off, and a congested bus drop off. You have to remedy that. That's part of why we're here. That's part of the solution. And without impacting site, based on a school for 310 students and pre-K, it will impact the site. We want to minimize it 100%. We want to minimize that impact to site. But there are factors that make us need to expand on what you have currently.
I would add to that, yeah, there's a safety issue. I live on Maple Street, and I can express calmly some frustration with the queuing on the street itself, especially during inclement days. You can't get down Maple Street in the morning or in the afternoon because one full lane is blocked off with people dropping their kids off or picking them up. So the safety issue is not just site specific, and this isn't Maple Street either, it's Melican, every school we have. The number of parents that choose not to have their kids take the bus and drop them off and pick them up, that's just kind of a separate issue, but on Maple Street alone, the street itself is unsafe because of the loop or parking on site.
I'll do Tristan, then Mike.
And I agree, we do need to improve the drop off. We do need more parking. Those are some key issues. And I think we can, in subsequent phases, find the right solution that strikes a balance. I think Jake does make a point about, do we really need to run a paved road the entire perimeter? Or is there a better solution? I tend to think that there's something kind of in the middle where if we keep, a road tight to the building, if it was at the front of the site. And like you said, maybe the back portion isn't public travel, is, emergency use only, maybe it's a green road, maybe it's some other material, pervious material.
Exactly.
That doesn't involve changing the grading, changing the base of the next, quarter mile around the backside of the site. Because that takes away from play areas as well.
Excuse me 1 second. Can you folks who are joining hybrid, how's the audio? Okay, they're all happy. A sea of thumbs up. Okay, thank you.
No, it's fine. It sounds
Audio's
great.
good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
So I think there is some fine tuning to be done in later phases. I think what we're trying to figure out now, so that we can move on to the next phase, is understanding the difference between the B series options. Some of them show a full perimeter road. Some of them show a tighter configuration. They all show, parking spaces at different places. But kind of back to my original comment, there's a difference in costs depending on what you do with each one of those. And I think it's substantial enough that it should be reflected in the matrix so that it becomes part of our decision criteria to move on to that next phase. And then it'll get changed, adjusted, fine-tuned, but it is we are at a decision point right now of which which path do we go down?
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to just briefly add that experience with sister school Lincoln Street. After a successful addition renovation, one thing that maybe could have gotten a little bit more work was how the parent pickup and queuing works, especially after COVID. And it hasn't really ever gotten improved. You have cars backing onto Lincoln Street, and even doing Walker pickup. I've seen many close calls with cars coming over that hill on Lincoln and not seeing cars or passing on the left, and so I cost is always king. But whatever design and whatever we land on for roadway and vehicle pickup has to keep those cars, in my opinion, off of Maple. That's a safety issue. I just wanted to add from my experience with the design and renovation from Lincoln. And I'm considering that heavily in what we do here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. In the interest of time, we are having a discussion about documents that were provided in the past 14 days in response to your excellent questions. There were two other documents. There was a suite of public safety memos provided by our chief of police and acting chief of fire chief. And then we also had material comparing the Lincoln Street project that was requested. Do any committee members have any further comments on those memos? Did they adequately answer your questions? Do you understand the memos? Any other comments? Sean?
So, in looking back over some of the information, which was a lot of info, I had a little nagging voice, and it took me a while, probably longer than it should have, but I kept going back to Lincoln Street, which was literally really acclaimed by everyone, that the renovation addition worked. I don't even know if there was any complaints at all about it. And so I looked into the square footage. The schools are the same size. You start at 45,000. Then assume we're gonna go with the pre-K, that's another 12. I don't know how we get to 76,000 square feet. And then I just thought, if we dial it back to 45 plus 12 for pre-K and I don't know, 8 or 10,000, would that preclude needing a second story, which saves money in that regard, and it clearly saves. Rough estimate of the square foot cost was $1,300 a square foot. So it may not seem like much, but if we take away 5,000 square feet, we're $7, $8, $9 million savings. And like I said, then you add in the necessity of on the second floor, and so it just the nagging voice about Lincoln Street. How did we get to 76,000 square feet? I guess is a good start. Again, we peel it back.
So how you got to 76,000 square feet is, adding the pre-K, which was the 12,000. And then you have the MSBA default template. So the MSBA default template still doesn't fit within your, based on 310 students. So that came from an enrollment letter that the MSBA has their own folks that look at your growth, etc. So even with that, the MSBA default doesn't fit within the 45,000 square feet. But when you add, whether it's 10,000, etc. There are some components that are beyond the MSBA default template, which are specific to how Northborough is delivering special education and their core academics. So the only thing I can say to you right now is I think there's time to sharpen the pencil.
Yeah.
We might be able to pull that back a little bit. I don't know if it's going to get exactly to, I think I saw the question was getting back to maybe 65,000 square feet. I think after we have conversations with the leadership team, we might be able to pull that back a little bit, but I can't say that because we have the MSBA default template, that doesn't fit into 45,000 square feet.
Right.
Because the MSBA gave you an enrollment scenario that's beyond 45,000 square feet.
But what I heard you say, Sean, is that we're dealing with identical buildings, you know, pre-addition renovation of Lincoln.
Yeah.
And Peaslee, which is 45,000 square feet. We know that does not meet the education program. And in addition, the Lincoln project enrollment was 275. We added 8,000 square feet to meet educational programming needs. So we're at, 55,000 square feet. This building, in comparison, being about 10,000 square feet larger. When you look at enrollment numbers, 275 to 310 isn't a significant amount where you need another 10,000 square feet. So I think the work that we'll do as a district is working with architects, evaluating all the spaces again to make sure that we're not overbuilding, that the space we're using is efficient. The only way we're going to reduce costs in this project
Is to reduce
is square footage, making decisions around site work, making decisions around heating. There's some key decision points that will impact the cost of the project. One is square footage. So I think it is important to look at that more closely. I think from my perspective, I think we need to take a close look. We've talked with architects about plans work without going through this space needs template again and saying, okay, what do we need in terms of square footage to meet the educational programming?
So just if I think out loud simply, does the state indicate if you take our money, here's the blueprint, that each classroom has to be 20 by 20? Or does the state say, show us your needs and we'll accommodate you, in effect?
Ken,
You know what I mean? Are we locked into
Yes, you
square footage?
you are with the core academic.
Yeah.
So when you look at the default template, you have to match what they have for the baseline default based on 310 students. You do have to have classrooms that at least meet, 925 square feet. Your gymnasium, this is a really good one because your gymnasium by the default is 6,000 square feet. That's an open box. So right now your gymnasium is at 3,200 square feet. It doesn't fit. So you have to replace that. So they have these mandates that you really can't go back and negotiate because that's their base standard.
Yeah.
As they release it to hundreds of different towns. So yes, they do dictate what you should have for a baseline square footage on those classrooms. And that's why I wish I could come today and say, yes, it's just like, we're doing 800 square foot classrooms, they're not gonna support.
No, but there's a range, right? There's a
When you
range.
say not supported, is there level of reimbursement drop or is it zero?
They won't support them. So basically, they put a range on the space template that with elementary schools, it's between 925 and you can go as high as I think 975 in a general academic classroom. You can't go below the 925. That's just on the default template. If we had shown the group before the template, you can see off to the side, we cannot go below this.
But I want to go back to the space template and look at, for example, a STEM lab.
Yeah.
Like, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve by having that type of space? And what other ways we can accomplish programming needs without having a dedicated space for STEM lab? And that's an example of the space that, we have to really have some serious conversation. Is that the space we need? Is that the space we want?
And that's a great example because that's 1350 times the multiplier. So that's 1,350 square feet times the multiplier, the grossing factor. That either MSBA will support or not, or the district feels is necessary. There's always different ways to look at STEM spaces. So right now we do have the STEM space as part of the template, but that would be, I would say, a great area to start.
thank you. I see raised hands, so I think I have Mike and Tristan, then Karina. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll start with Mike.
Yeah, no, I don't know if Karina had her hand up pertinent to this conversation, so I'll defer to her if she wanted to jump in.
Karina, pertinent to this?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to bring up is that the MSBA does comment on what we submit to them. Like, for example, for the PDP, when we submitted and we included any square footage, they will let us know if they feel like the square footage for a room is too big or too small. And so they will be on this process with us along the way, and they will provide their comments as well. So I want to make sure that you all know that as well.
Thank you, Mike, then Tristan.
Okay, thanks. Just one real quick. Really appreciate Chief Griffin and Acting Chief Espesi getting those detailed memos out and on short notice. So certainly appreciate that from them. And then with the talk of Lincoln, is there, and I know there's some square footage differences. We're talking about a pre-K. Is there anything from that Lincoln design that could be carried over and would affect the reimbursement rate, right? Because I know if you use an existing design or maybe there's levels of that where if we're kind of using something that already exists, we could get some additional reimbursement, or are those buildings are we too different now from when Lincoln was done to what we're doing now?
I'll jump in, but if you're speaking to the model school program, no, that would be a completely different project.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I didn't have the right name off the top of my head, but yeah, that's what I was asking.
Thank you. Tristan?
Keith, question on enrollment. So the 310, Keith.
Great.
Right.
Wait, let's ask Keith.
We can ask him.
He's on the-
Yeah.
I'm ready. Go ahead.
He's ready, he says, okay, yeah.
Does the 310, does that include the pre-K?
Yes.
So that's base student population plus the pre-K.
So the additional 12,000 square feet would accommodate preschool enrollment in addition to three.
That's where I was going with that, is that 12,000 square feet that we're carrying for pre-K, does that include the difference between 275 and 310, or is that 310 plus?
300 plus.
Thank you.
Question, the existing classrooms are 935, right? So they are in compliance,
They're in compliance.
just that, nothing else in our school.
Nothing else, but
Which
Which is great.
Which I think that's kind of the benefit, because it's a very organized, systematic thing, and they fit, and yes, there will be some throw envelope, like improvements that need to happen. But you're gonna still stay within that threshold of the.
So we wouldn't think, yeah, you're gonna have to fur out the walls a little bit.
We're gonna have to fur out the walls a little bit, and then the demising wall is gonna have to be, we have to meet our STC ratings for things. So there will be some furring and massaging, but you're still gonna be within that range.
I know, that's the nice thing about the Peaslee is walking around, is like they do have some really nice big classrooms
So it's
compared to other schools.
And I think that's one of the things with, these, it is a systematic, very organized thing, and it just happens that it.
So you don't see like, and I know you can't see the exact.
Even if we fur out. Sorry about that.
Water.
Even if we fur out on the
He's done.
demising walls for the SGC rating, and then we improve your thermal envelope on the exterior, you're still gonna be within that range. So it does accommodate, because it's a systematic, organized system.
I think one of the things they did at Lincoln, either it was to hide MEPs or they needed a little bit, just a little bit more, is they took some space from the corridors.
The hallways, yeah.
They narrowed the hallways and moved that into the classrooms. That worked well.
Thank you. Okay, at this point,
Good comment, yeah.
we are wrapping up the OPM update. There will be a time for further review, and we're gonna get into these designs when we go to designer update. Is there any further word from our OPM to wrap that out? Okay, so I think what I'll do is thank you for all the good questions. I mean, what a team, that there's no just nod and comply. I mean, really good detailed questions. So, and I saw every one of them, so you kept me busy. But I would like to move into designer update and review and discussion of schematic design options in that order. I believe there'll be a screen share from Jennifer. Let's see.
So we did circulate a document showing very preliminary floor plans for each of the B series options. Since then, we have added a couple of points to help highlight some of the differences between them. And we just wanted to review that with the group before we get into discussions. And just prefacing that these are preliminary, whatever option is decided upon, there'll be further iterations obviously explored, so you're not committing to these particular floor plans when making your votes. So I did put it right here. So everyone's familiar with this B1 site plan at this point, showing the approximate footprint outside of the bounds of the existing footprint and the fields to the south. And then digging into the floor plan. We wanted to highlight that with the new build, we are able to still get a dedicated pre-K area with separate entry. And the classroom neighborhoods, which fit in with the educational programming that was outlined in the PDP binder. So each classroom grouping has a team space with integrated small group spaces and collaboration spaces. The community centered areas, the gymnasium, cafeteria, stage, etc., are all very close to the main entry and grouped together for easy separation from the academic spaces and after hours functions, etc. The music, the band space is adjacent to the stage, the gym adjacent to the fields. The main entry is highly visible from Maple Street and Central. And ultimately, there's a lot of flexibility in whatever this plan looks like, because we're starting on a new footprint. Then going to B2 with the addition towards Maple Street. With this option, there is still the ability to have a dedicated pre-K area with its own entrance. And we were able to fit a music band area adjacent to the stage. However, the central circular corridor of the existing building would remain with the existing classrooms on that singular corridor. So there isn't the same opportunity to organize them into classroom neighborhoods with, adjacent collaboration spaces, group spaces, etc. So they're missing that sort of team element, but we would be able to retain a lot of the existing partitions, or hypothetically keep a lot in the existing partitions. The community spaces, there's a little bit more of a winding route, but they could still be somewhat separated. But in this one, the entry is on the side of the building versus facing Maple Street, which may not be quite as ideal for security, etc. In B3, with the addition to the north, similar to B2, we're able to create a dedicated pre-K area with its own entry. The gymnasium is adjacent to the play areas and fields, which is convenient, but we have the same existing circular corridor, so there isn't the same ability to have the team areas. And there's more limitations on the location of the music areas as well, as we're maintaining the existing entry to the south and require the admin space in that area that would otherwise be occupied by music. And then going to B4 with a larger addition to the north. With the larger addition, again, we're able to have those classroom neighborhoods with the dedicated collab and small groups adjacent to them. There is a dedicated pre-K with pre-K entry. We're able to achieve that band to stage adjacency. And the art STEM media grouping as per B1. But the entry again is tucked into the side. And the gymnasium is in the opposite corner as the play in the fields. That's the overall summary of the different B series options.
Could someone discuss the importance of neighborhood classrooms and the team space and why it was deemed programmatically beneficial? Stephanie? Reinhorn?
Sure, I'm happy to, and Greg, feel free to jump in. In the educational visioning process and in visiting other schools, the team of educators in writing our educational plan talked about they saw some schools that had this kind of model of having pods of groups of classrooms, and saw the advantages of being able to potentially have flexible groupings where kids are moving kind of across classrooms and using common spaces, where providers might be coming to the learning neighborhood and working with small groups, potentially in the team area rather than the kids moving to a different area. So they're just really just some opportunities for different ways of grouping students and working together. With that said, I think these are things that we would potentially be able to achieve with other configurations. I don't think it's exclusively possible with this configuration. It can be, for example, things like having movable walls between classrooms can create different opportunities for grouping across classrooms, or having small spaces, in adjacent to certain classrooms without having that team space. But that's kind of where it came from. I don't know, Greg, if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, so the only thing I would add, Stephanie, is that when you look at this C series, when you look at grades 3, 4, and 5, idea was to have a pod of third grade classrooms together with neighborhood space where they could come out and conduct their learning outside of the classroom, gather outside of the classroom. So in the C series, the learning neighborhood was really important. As we look at a smaller neighborhood school, obviously you have multi-age classrooms near each other. I think it would be nice to have, in terms of having academic space, flexible space that classrooms could spill out into, but less important in a neighborhood school model where you have 2 or 3 sections of a grade level.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this designer update?
Could you go to B2? I just had a question on, so one of the things we talked about before was what happens to that space between the addition and the existing building, and it looks like you've created some space between the two.
Is that a hallway?
Is that a hallway? Is that in a courtyard? Is that?
I know, I just.
It's a courtyard because we're trying to make sure as we updated the options that we can construct the addition. We were trying to be respectful at least of 25 feet from the foundations of the existing building. So this would have a courtyard incorporated into this option, because if we push the addition hard up against the existing, then we lose all the natural light for a majority of classrooms.
That was my concern, because you'd have a big interior block. And I think that addresses that concern. You preserve those views and you create views for the classrooms on the opposite side. And frankly, it's easier to construct because you have a buffer space.
Yeah. I mean, just for rule of thumb, we want to keep a minimum of 25 feet. And I think that's where this line is, because we don't want to undermine the existing building. And we want to make sure that if a contractor comes in, they have enough adequate space to the footings, et cetera, for the superstructure for the addition.
Things like lifts to do brickwork and windows.
Kelly?
So the lobby and administration would be on like the south side though. So would there be some? I guess you said it's quite, so it's like hollowed out, that's open roof, but there's hallways that are interior, so it's connected.
There's interior,
Yeah.
I think if you go to the site plan, you
Kind of
can.
like the other interior courtyard that.
And that's there now,
across
it's
from
like all
cafeteria.
buildings, yeah. I like that better than I thought it was, that was my big thing, was using all those windows, on the south side.
And I think here, it's a site plan is an older rendition, but
Yeah.
essentially, like, imagine that building coming 25 feet closer. So you're just putting a little bit more stress on, like, what you can do in front of people. And that's where we've kind of redirected the bus drop off in this option, but it's again, being respectful to the existing building with addition, so. We took a deep dive into the floor plan, we can be achieved.
And I like it because, like you said, it preserves the classrooms, which are really the value of the existing building, because they're the right size, they're laid out well. And we add the spaces that are deficient in lacking. So I like it.
Thank you. Any other questions on agenda item 4, which is the designer update, before we get into the matrix? Meaning this matrix, not like the matrix.
I love Kim.
Well, okay, thank you. So we will, all of the committee members have updated a modified matrix of options, including B1 through B4. And this is in contrast to a matrix that had 9 options, and at our last meeting, we eliminated 5 of those options and decided to advance these 4 options for further discussion and consideration. I'll turn it over to PMA to discuss the aggregated data and any observations that you had from reviewing the aggregated data.
So reviewing the aggregated data, which is not weighted with the high, low, this is used as a discussion piece to analyze what the committee wants to do. But just based on just normal scoring,
Sorry, it is weighted or not weighted?
not weighted.
Okay,
So it doesn't factor in the high versus medium. It essentially just is a heat map of how everyone felt about each option for the categories presented. With that being said, B1 did have the highest scoring. And then B2 and B3 both had the same scoring for the second, and then B4 had the lowest out of the 4 options. As you can see, B2 and B3 which has a high priority though, were most advantageous for the education considerations. Site parking, people had B2 as the highest aggregate for, and that's a high
That's a medium.
criteria. The site parking was high. B1, B2 and B3 all had similar aggregates regarding the maximization of building systems efficiencies. And then the swing space, which B1 and B4 due to the modulars had, which is a high priority due to the non-reimbursement of modulars, were more advantageous than the rest. I don't know if anyone has any questions looking at it or wants to go into.
Just curious, like, I see the colors and things, but I'm just curious, like, what are the numbers of the people? You know what I mean? Like, so like how many people, like you averaged it to like light, the medium green color, right? So, but like, how many people?
So
What
it
was
was,
9 voting?
Yeah,
So
so
it's like, how many of
everyone's-
the 9 like wanted that? Like, how does?
it was all 9 divided by, or all scores added up, divided by 9. And then averaged in 2.5 to 3.49 rounded to neutral. Anything above 4.5 was rounded up to 5, so we used kind of the basic rounding method based on everyone's aggregate to give a color map of kind of the full committee's input all into one. And with the high, medium, low, we went through and added how many highs were there, how many lows, and factored if there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows, then it could be considered medium. Or if there's majority highs and only a couple mediums, then there's high, where there wasn't really a set value to average off that. That was more of a median / mode situation.
And then in terms of the weighting of each one, was it too complex to add people's subjective weightings of how high a priority that particular row was?
What
I just mean that like everybody was dropping down, is parking, is that the most important thing or the least important thing?
So
Yeah.
with those with high versus low, like I said, we took the medium and modes depending on if there's 8 highs and 1 low, it got ranked
I see, okay,
based on the
okay,
committee.
yep, got it,
But it does not factor into the actual scoring because
Okay.
this isn't a scoring matrix, this is a heat map to evaluate the options. The MSBA always puts education, it's not a ranking system, it's really for open discussion to see how other committee members do.
thank you. At this time, are there any comments or discussion? Are there any options that folks feel like could be eliminated on the basis of this matrix? Do people feel strongly about narrowing down? Because at the end of the day, are we talking about all 4 options, or are we having a focused discussion about a couple of the options that rise to the top? Sean?
I have a question, and maybe it's too soon for this, but. If modular classrooms are or are not a deal breaker, is it too soon to figure out if can we save $4 million on a footprint and have modular classrooms and get a better product? Yes, is a way of looking.
I think that's part of the discussion, it's like, it is.
Yeah, I don't have.
Overall, if we spend $4 million on, because we choose an option that requires
Right.
modulars. Is that worth it
Exactly.
in the grand scheme of things?
Because
Based on,
you could initially, I think. If you look at it quickly, you say modular, it's $4 million, it's not reimbursable, we don't want that. But then if you start to. Look into some of the additions and renovations. Maybe it's more advantageous. Maybe it's a better product with modulars. That will end up with. Is that too soon to get to close to that, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if
I think it's just a factor of right now from the information we have is you're gonna require that so that.
Yeah.
Whether it's 4 million or 3.5,
Yeah.
it's not reimbursed, but that's a huge factor.
Yeah.
And then I think it's like the end result, what do you want to achieve with the site? So I think those site plans, when you go back, and look at the site plans, is this how you want to operate the school for the next 50 years?
So could I direct a question to Greg then? In terms of the educational experience and what benefits the kids, which probably is what we're all looking for anyway. Did having modulars at Lincoln Street, is that being detrimental or?
No, I mean, I think if you continue to have students on site in any project, it can be challenging. I think that experience at Lincoln Street, where they renovated half the building, moved half the kids into the modulars and half stayed in the non-renovated part, worked. But there are compromises during that window of construction.
Were there any indications, I don't know, we don't do MCAS anymore, were there any indications on testing or
No, I don't think
experience that it was detrimental?
No, I don't think academic performance suffered as a result.
It was more of a daily disruption.
Yeah.
Routine disruption. Kids are fairly resilient, right? I think that's an important consideration, I know for myself.
And so looking at the matrix on here, and looking at, there's a little bit higher reimbursement rate potential for ad reuse. I'm assuming that's kind of baked into your ranges that you gave on there for, 29 to 31 million, 32 to 34 million. That accounts for some of that the points plus the price difference between them.
Yeah.
More for reusing?
You do get,
It's a point scale,
yeah,
a
if,
percentage for the amount you're retaining.
if we reuse 45,000 square feet and footage up to 76, we get about, I think it was 2.9 or 2.9 points on reimbursement. So I want to make sure that was in there. But just kind of totaling those lines out as it sits without there's some adjustments that need to be made. But including the modulars, there's $1 million to $1.5 million difference between new build and existing. So that includes the modular costs. I think if we're looking at some of those things I mentioned earlier, that brings the B2 through 3 options down below what we're projecting here. And so that might actually, even with modulars, it might be a lesser cost overall.
So I guess my original, is it too soon to make that determination?
Well, I think right now we have to carry that premium.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the other avenue is to swing the kids, but that, potential $4 million hit is considerable. And then I think when you step back and you look at what the different options can achieve, I think there's a value to, what a B1 can do versus a B2 compared to a B, 3 and 4. I think when you look at B4 with the addition in the back, it does, I would say, kind of stress your athletic field, your play fields. I mean, it's a graphic. I think everybody can look at B3 and probably say, this addition out back, it is stressing how we displace, play areas and play fields. So that's pretty apparent. I think B4 does that maybe even a little bit more, to be honest with you. So I mean, I think it's good if you could, are you able to log back in? Site plans?
Yeah.
But I would say, like, looking at the overall option, like B4 gives you a little bit more flexibility in designing those, because you have a bigger addition, those, academic neighborhoods, et cetera. But it does stress what you can do with your play fields and play areas.
Honestly, to me, the B4 looked more chopped up than some
It's a
of
bit,
the other options.
it's
not a.
Before I have a hard time envisioning how that approach into the building is gonna look with just a teeny tiny chunk of the old building and then new building behind it.
It's a lot of square footage. I think the beauty about B4 was you're over your existing square footage, the 45,000, so you can swing all the kids into it. So there's logistically, it's actually a really smart option if you don't want modulars, but it does push your play areas to the south.
And I would say of any of those options, it's at least equal with B1, if not more, on site impact, because it is. There's a lot, you're maintaining the existing building, plus you're putting a big addition and you're putting parking in the back. It's a lot from that standpoint.
And I think, as Jennifer pointed out, it's gonna be difficult, like, so say the gymnasium, right? You want gymnasiums to have, community access. Sure, you got a big parking lot there. But the day-to-day, it's hard for the gymnasium for students to kind of go back and forth to the play areas. So I would say B4, looking at this, we can reconfigure the wings. The wings can rotate, the wings can do whatever, but at the end of the day, the play areas are still going to be justified to the south. So I would say B4 is a great option, looking at like, how do you be resourceful by retaining some of your existing options? But I would say it's probably, it's restrictive.
And it doesn't reuse the best parts of the existing building, which are the repeatable classrooms.
It's reusing components for a specific need. So if there's a pre-K and you want it as a dedicated wing, it checks off the box for that. But it does not retain, I would say, the existing like structural CAR-T that the other options do. And then I think on B3.
Yeah, can you compare B3 and B2? Because
Yeah, that's fine. Like, I think the site plan's, you know, kind of the best. I think B3 is a great option because it's similar to Lincoln. It kind of, you know, it's jutting out to the north. You have a really good entry plaza, bus drop off. We can negotiate the parent, you know, pickup, drop off. But if we're talking about looking at reducing site impact, we're still trying, the loop road's going around the athletic area and the play area. We can pull that back, but when we pull it back, we can't fit, say, the baseball field like north of that. So I think this is one of those options where you have lots of queuing space to get all the, you know, parents off of Maple Street, but you are impacting a lot on the site here. And your play area here is a little more restricted because one thing, you see the ball field in the play area, but if you wanted, say, like, you know, kind of U10 soccer field or something like incorporated, it's going to be very difficult within that, unless you're compromising like the layout of
And that gets based a lot now to Peaslee is the soccer field for practice
And
things like
the
that.
base-
So losing
the
that is
baseball
gonna be a hit to the programs.
So we still have a baseball and a soccer area to the right.
You do.
Yeah.
Could we enhance those? In effect,
You could, but right now we're staying in kind because those estimates don't look at improving anything on that net. But if you go to B2, I think the issue here with B2 is it's very similar to like kind of what you have today. The addition's going to be to the south. We need to maintain our parking. So the parent queuing and drop off is kind of infused with general parking. So traffic wise, we're able to keep everything, I would say, southbound of your existing fields, get your play fields like they're similar today. But there will be a little congestion when we look at the amount of parking in the parent queuing, how we're gonna do that. Now that's something that's part of the study. You got VHB, who is our traffic engineer, they're gonna look at different like configuration, et cetera. So this is just a more compact version. And just to my point earlier, and I know we're looking at a site plan, but we're still gonna do a fair amount of work for those fields. Those are all new. We have the geothermal, but as far as impervious, we're being more compact. So when you look at your bus queuing and your parent drop off storage length with 145 spaces, it's an improvement from what you have today, but it still is a lot of stress around the immediate building. And if you go to B1,
There's
Before
no,
you do Kelly.
there's no cut to DPW either with this one, right? No.
construction access, they permitted it, but from
But for safety,
But
like,
the
I think that was
safety
one of the
that they
things that we were
recognize.
talking about is adding like an extra connection. So that's not, that was,
it could exist, but that was more construction logistics. But the issue here is during the construction, you're all coming from me. So contract, like you still can provide access and we can phase it. So they're still coming from the north. But you got a lot of heat on the south side for your day to day. From that B3 option. Like B3 option would have been built to the north. You had that construction access from DPW. And then you didn't really disrupt your day-to-day pickup drop off. Here, you're in the thick of it.
There's some ways that I would like thinking with my construction hat on. If you were to create the loop road and some of that ancillary parking first, that's summer number one. That allows the pickup drop off to happen exterior to the construction site. And then the the front addition kind of gets its own little bubble in the front.
Compartmentalized to the front, yeah.
So that could be a way to help
So that's,
with that.
yeah.
Because you've changed the traffic pattern first off. And I think this arrow shows flow going counter or clockwise.
Yes,
Yeah.
But if you ran it counterclockwise, so parent queuing enters from the right side and goes around, the buses are able to get in there and get out before the parents clog it up. And it gives you a longer queuing.
It does give you a longer queuing, but historically, we want to make sure that the parents are not dropping off on the driver's side. So we have to be kind of aware, like, so the buses, however they're approaching the loop, have to go clockwise because the driver is on the left-hand side and the door is on the right side. And then similar with the parent pickup. Traditionally, the parent will again be on the, left-hand side. So if you go clockwise with the parent for the storage, and I think with this drop off, we were looking at probably 800 linear feet of people backing up. You want the parent, you want the child to out of the, right-hand door.
Oh, I can't hear it anymore. Is it just me? There's no sound on my end.
I can hear you, Karina, but I don't hear.
I think they muted themselves. Let me text.
Just while we're on it, just while we're going through all the options, just like, let's just rehash, B1, so it's built off the footprint, pretty conventional construction. The loop road does extend around the entire building. It creates the fields that are south of the new addition that are not interrupted by any roadways, so kids and teachers can do access back and forth without any, restrictions with the roadways. So obviously B1 gives you a lot of flexibility with building organization and site layout. Just one to.
thank you. I don't know how long we were muted, but I think you just missed the conversation about the reason that for traffic flow for safe drop off from the driver's side. And we were just talking about parking and loop road. Can you address, where would modulars be located on this site? Like B2, B3, where would you put them?
Yep, so go to B2. So on B2, we would locate the modulars on the north side.
Playing fields.
In the playing fields. So you're gonna have the geothermal be installed, and then you're gonna have a section of modulars, and then kind of traditions like early site enabling comment. We get the loop road at least established, but you're gonna have the geothermal system being installed, and you're gonna have modulars to the north, because that's the only area that you can get the 10 classrooms plus.
How many modulars are there? 10?
We're looking at 10 right now, but that's gonna be something we need to evaluate, because right now you have, I would say approximately 12 general classrooms within the main building with the K. We're just looking at a general 10 and toilets and a little bit of supervision with admin.
And B3?
And B3 is. So in B3, it can be a little bit different. We can put the modulars actually to the north off Justified to the right side of the addition or to the south, but we would probably propose keeping it in that area so your day-to-day logistics is not interrupted. Because if we put the modulars in front of the building, that's going to disrupt your current parent pickup and drop off. So even on B3, we would probably put the modulars perpendicular, Justified to the right-hand side to the addition, and that would give you your current pickup and drop off. So there's a lot of logistics when you get into swing space. And it's temporary, but it's something to be considered.
Kelly?
Are they, their hands, are they done?
Yeah,
Are they?
I think Mike had a question.
Mike, do you have a question?
Or was he there, were they just talking about us? Right.
No, I do have a question, but again, Karina, if you had something pertinent to what they were talking about, I can defer to you.
Mike, you should go first.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks. No, and just kind of a little different, just kind of some of my thinking, especially after reading the comments and the detailed memos from police and fire. Uh, some of the concerns I had about B1 and B4 are having elementary classrooms on a second floor, and adding obviously an additional cost, need for an elevator, need for access. And then if you have a classroom on a second floor, if for some reason that egress is blocked, they don't have another way to get out. So, obviously you don't want to plan everything necessarily for a worst case scenario, but kind of thinking about everything. What we come up with will have, will be good for the education of our school kids. But again, thinking about that public safety piece, the way I think about it, one, if you're on a second floor, there's only, your egress is if that's blocked for some reason, there's no other way out. And then every window that doesn't empty out to the exterior, right, that's another way, if needed, students and staff could exit the building if God forbid they had to. So that was part of, reading their comments and factoring in how I scored. That was some of the things that I thought about was, the additional costs of adding that second floor with access, elevator, and then also sort of safe evacuation. And then obviously, I think any one of these designs, we could get an access back through the DPW so that, a public safety vehicle could get back there. But kind of thinking about it, all the other elementary schools we have in Northborough and ones that I've been in, I know you could safely build ones with multiple stories and train and practice and have safe evacuation. But kind of I reading their comments, that's kind of what a big takeaway that I had was sort of concerns around classrooms on a second floor.
And
Yeah, this is Ken jumping in, and so absolutely, like, those are good comments. Obviously, if there's a building, addition or, on the second floor, it's gonna be applicable codes. We would work with, local jurisdiction to make sure that they felt, that they were satisfied with access, et cetera. But when it comes to costs, that same square footage is gonna exist somewhere. So you're gonna disrupt the ground plane on the first level with foundations and a bigger footprint and a bigger site impact. So that's something to consider as well. Obviously, when you do a two-story addition, you're consolidating, so you're reducing the, foundations and the overall general footprint. It does economically make sense to go to 2 stories. There are MSBA projects at elementary schools that are up to 4 stories. That's not Northborough. So we were sticking to 2 stories max on this one. But it is common with a lot of MSBA projects. But as far as economy, traditionally, if you go to 2 stories, it's less money than the 1 story because of the amount of site work and the disruption to the site, the ground plane.
Kevin is nodding his head, for the record. Karina, then Kelly.
Yeah.
Karina, then Kelly.
Yeah, so just, I want to make sure that I'm understanding the question from earlier. I think that Sean had about, what choice, needs to be made and when it should be made. We do need to submit to the MSBA, by June 25th. I'm not saying that we need to make a choice tonight, but, we would need to get a decision from the committee before we do the submission, whether it's tonight or if we meet again next week. That's all I wanted to bring up. I just don't know if I understood the question from Sean correctly.
That's fine. I was a little, I guess I still am a little hesitant to make a hard and fast vote tonight, I guess.
Kelly.
So I was gonna say about how am I gonna bring about the public safety and their letters and how I took some of the stuff a little different, how some of their issues, they were saying that the longer first floor and the more things, it can be complex in an emergency situation to get through the buildings. If you've got like multiple, 2 buildings next to each other,
Yeah.
So that's how I took that part. You know, I know they did say about the 2 floors and things like that, but, so for me too, that I put more. It's funny that option 4 was the least favorite, cause that was one of my. For the ad rental, that was one of my favorite ones, cause I was like, stuff. Everything and things, but, so. But yeah, their comments were interesting, the different takes of the public safeties.
All right, so one committee member has expressed that thought for having more time to make a decision. I think it would be my question to this committee. Are there any options that could be after tonight that could be ruled out for consideration? Because I think having a focused discussion between a couple of options is kind of a different pros cons than looking at all 4 options together. If we look back at the matrix, the first, second, and B1, B2, B3 are the top 3 contenders. But we heard from a member that B4 was their preferred. So,
I'm gonna love whatever's chosen, people.
okay.
I'm gonna embrace it, and it's gonna be great, it's gonna be fabulous.
Okay. So I'm open to feedback from this committee. As Karina said, our job is to advance a choice, and for the well-being of Jennifer, who I'd like to preserve her health, because we do have like a ways to go, but when the decision to advance something, they also need time to then assemble the PSR documentation, which if the PDP was any indication, I think that was about 600 pages, so I'd like you alive moving forward. So anyway, that's a consideration on my mind.
She is backup, so.
Oh, she has a team, yes, okay.
There's a team involved.
So we do have, next week is available, if that's the will of the committee. Is the committee ready to talk about narrowing options at tonight's meeting?
I mean, one thing I would just like to know is kind of, we don't have to do an extensive pros and cons of it, but if we had a little bit of pros and cons that we could then like kind of ponder over, that would, I feel, maybe make the next meeting go more efficiently or more things, so then we kind of can be thinking about, because as I said, like sometimes somebody says something, I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way, I never thought it, you know, and it might make me, but if I don't hear, if we don't hear that till next time, then am I gonna really be able to make a good decision next time? I don't know.
I mean, I'm still of the opinion that B1 and B4 are a very hard sell to the people of Northborough because of the precedent set at Lincoln Street. I mean, it is the identical school to Peaslee, and they were able to successfully reuse 100% of the building and do the addition. So that's just my personal opinion, is that I think you're gonna have a lot of questions from people outside of this committee about why they could do it at Lincoln Street and not be able to do it here, and that's where I sit on that. So I'm in the B3, like that's about it out.
Yeah, I would just say quickly, I think I agree with Jake as far as where my head is at as far as narrowing down the options. But B1 did score the highest. So I think maybe tonight, if we were to narrow down, maybe just dropping the lowest one, which was B4, and then getting more detail or I don't know what more information we could get or need, but to look at B1, B2, B3, just because B1 did score the highest with our heat map, but that wasn't weighted, right? So I assume there's no way to, we're not weighting these, right, and rescoring them based on what we submitted based on low, medium, and high, correct?
No, because this is not, as the MSBA says, it's not a scoring metric, this is essentially a heat map to analyze it, so that's why we hide the numbers. As you can see, there's no numbers in this heat map, it's truly supposed to show the overall most advantageous versus least advantageous per each option, and then each person kind of factors in the high, the lows, the mediums. This is a discussion piece.
Gotcha.
Kind of narrow down that option.
And there's no additional exercise or scoring between now and getting to a final B series to move forward with.
It would
What-
just be a discussion between the committee members.
Yeah,
and, like, we can provide the pro and cons list for like the narrow down options from before if we decide to narrow it down today.
Those pros and cons are kind of already outlined on each slide, so it'd really be
Yeah,
the
just-
committee who would have to provide all of their pros and cons, so we can compile that into a master sheet for everyone to kind of look at. But it'd be more work on the committee, obviously.
My only comment would be on B4, because, I mean, you know, between Jennifer, myself, and like the team, like we have spent time on B4, and I would say that it most likely is not as flexible as some of the other options. I think what you see is kind of what you get. Then I'm just gonna leave it at that, because we tried to massage it, we tried to do a bunch of different things, and we kind of let it lie, because I think it's a good option that shows, you know, one option that, you know, try to retain at least half and see if there's some flexibility that, you know, removing half would create. And from a design standpoint, it's not yielding what we thought it would do.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to go back to Jake's comment about how the town will take, you know, this concept of, well, they did it at Lincoln Street. Do we have a document or some kind of comparison between Lincoln Street and Peaslee? And I'm thinking about code differences that were in effect then compared to today, MSBA differences, even the site itself. I just pulled up, you know, Google image of Lincoln Street, and there's a lot more space available to the side of the building. That makes, you know, this whole site planning effort different. That makes temporary conditions different. While the structure itself is a sister school, there's still differences between the two. So just to think about, you know, long run, looking in the future, when this question comes up, why didn't we do what they did at Lincoln Street? Do we have some sort of document or bullet points behind kind of the logic of how we're approaching this differently today?
Thank you. Yes.
So one of the things that would, I'll die on this hill. But one of the things that I think would make a difference is cost. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about cost. When is the PSR estimate ready? Would it somehow fit our time frame so that hopefully those costs that I'll die on this hill, that there I think there's some differences that might change the outcome if we're looking at some of those renovation costs versus.
Well, we're slated to go
So the
next week, or
the 11th is when we have a reconciliation meeting between both of the cost estimators. I guess I feel like that's sort of like a question for Flansburgh, like, let's pretend we get this information by like end of next week. Then we won't probably circulate it by Friday the 12th, like the earliest we could circulate it, because the reconciliation meeting is Thursday, the 11th. Actually, I don't think Friday.
So generally, so when we get the reconciliation meeting on the 11th on Thursday, after that, then PM&C will need to go back with that information and make a final version of that estimate based on what that reconciled communication happened during that meeting. So we probably wouldn't be able to have it to the committee until the week of the 15th, probably early week of the 15th.
And by that point, that's 10 days away from the submission. So it's not.
I can't imagine like the needle going that much, but we're gonna go through, because like they're laser focused. But the biggest thing is that I want to address is at this level, and there's been a lot of conversation about it, is we're putting 24 months for new construction, but because logistics, just where we are right now, you know, I think between, you know, Flansburgh, PMA, our estimators, like we have to carry a little bit of buffer to that 30 months. That 6 months is the factor. That's your escalation that you're carrying for 6 months. But we haven't done a renovation where we're moving the kids around, even with the mods. We still have to move the kids around. And so that's, if I could tell you, like, we're gonna do this in 16, we're gonna do this, and it's all gonna work out, we can't shave that down right now.
I understand the cautious approach, and I think being cautious is good from all standpoints. But I also look at Lincoln was an 18-month project. And other ad rentals that I've personally been a part of or proposed on, they're all in that 18 to 24 month time frame. Because we have, that includes 2 summers, which you get a lot done in those 2 summers. And it's, for as much as you don't know going into renovation, we know an awful lot going into this one. That it divides pretty cleanly into 2 phases for the building. Entirely doable in 18 months. And if we're carrying 24, that's still providing some buffer from what we have experienced here in the town.
Yeah, I mean, then just going back to, I'll say B2 and B3, like that addition is gonna be 18 months no matter what, flat out, right? Then you swing the kids in, you still have mods. You move them out, then we're getting back in, we're demoing, and we have to do that second phase with the logistics, because we're not moving 100% of the kids into mods, so we still have things that we have to address. So I would say, from our perspective, is right now at a PSR level, we're probably not going to tilt the needle, bring that down from 30.
So I think that's some, if that's kind of your view, then I think everybody in the committee has to take their own assessment of, like, what do you think based on experience and your gut of how does it work? I feel like 24 months is, we can do it. 24 months.
But it's perspective, but I've been doing public schools since 1999. I've done a lot of renovations, I've done large scale and I've done small scale, everybody around. And at the end of the day, like 30 months, especially, we did take that question to PMNC and they looked at it with some of their smaller, and everybody's in alignment right now. And I would be nervous if going to the MSBA saying, hey, we're gonna pull this off in like 22. They're gonna be flat out like, how you doing it? Because you see everything swinging. So right now we're just building the budget. When we get into schematic design, we can start honing into that, and there will be conversations like, are you going to bring a CM on? Are you going to go hard bid? I mean, you bring a CM on board,
And
then it's a game changer.
Right. But we are at a crossroads where we decide, are we keeping the existing building and adding on to it, or are we putting it in the bin and building a new one? And once we cross that bridge, there's no going back.
I don't think the swing's going to be between the 6 months that we're holding, because historically we need that 6 months.
So Erica, bring it back to the original question. So it sounds like the committee is not ready to make this decision now, so when is like the next time that we're ready to meet?
I think there's a question out there if there's any of these options that might be able to.
Yeah, to narrow it down.
What you're saying is the
but aside from
numbers that Tristan's asking about, those aren't gonna come in until it's too late for us to
Yes.
make a decision. That's ultimately what we're saying, is they're not coming in time.
Yes.
So we have to make a decision without that factor. And
Correct.
Is there any consensus, or is there an interest to discuss further if there's a consensus about eliminating any options?
Is it, if I can, quick,
Yes.
is there any value in maybe just a straw poll of just seeing kind of, if we did have to make a decision tonight, just kind of where we're at as far as what we would go with,
Is there any?
without an official vote?
Is it just number raw? raw, first place overall.
I would just say in my head, it's almost counterintuitive that a brand new building is cheaper than renovation. And if the numbers are true, then it seems less disruptive and more accommodating to go with a new building, but to have a nagging again. Something about that suggests to me, I don't think that's. I don't know that.
I think the factor renovation is a gut renovation, so
Yeah.
you literally have the superstructure, the steel. And the components of that. So you have to look at it as you're gonna look at that building and you're gonna see a skeleton.
Yeah.
There might be some through the exercise, we're able to retain some of like the exterior perimeter and then thermally improve it on the inside. But every system is being replaced. So the MSBA has a mandate that you have a fiscally educationally sound, fiscally responsible building that lasts 50 years.
Yeah.
So when you look at the B series from B1, B2, B3, B4, you're gonna walk into a building that meets their mandate. And then when you go into the renovation, there's gonna be very little we're not gonna touch. We're touching every surface. We're putting in mechanical systems. I mean, if you look at the mechanical trade, that's gonna be 22% of the trade. Electrical is gonna be, 8% of the trade, 9% of the trade. Structural improvements to the renovation, depending on how would you RTUs and any steel reinforcements, going to be added on top of that. So I understand that I've renovated. If you look at the MSBA database, I have 2 projects right now, currently under construction, that show renovation as the lowest price point. One has 185,000 square feet of renovation. 185,000. It was 1980. That's the structure I'm dealing with. So basically, it was move-in ready when it came to that. So there was an economy of scale. So that was Webster. So you can look at the Webster project. You can look at the cost that's associated with it. It's 1980 vintage for that superstructure. It was perfect. The other one is Nauset Regional. So there we retained, I would say, probably 170,000 square feet. 160,000 square feet of cast concrete 1970 vintage. That thing was moving. It's in the National Seashore. So we were able to take advantage of that. Because it's the economy of scale when it comes to the amount of renovation with the superstructure that we have to use. Here, it's a great school. Our structural engineer wanted to evaluate it. There's very little settling. There's nothing about it. The issue is it's 45,000 square feet. We're going to retain the steel. The decking, as we go into schematic design and figure out if we're moving walls around, the decking is probably going to be replaced. It's going to be replaced. The exterior envelope, we're going to evaluate extremely carefully to see what we need to replace. So when you look at, this renovation versus new construction, why does new construction cost more? It's because it's built off the footprint of your existing school in 24 months. That's not interrupted. It has no modulars. And it's the same amount of effort that you're going to see with the renovation. That is standard with a lot of projects that we're seeing. The plumbing, we're going to be saw cutting in all your plumbing fixtures, all the underground. We're ripping those slabs out 100%. It's going to be very hard to keep your existing slabs intact. I would probably say I'll most likely keep about 60% of your slabs intact, 40% are out because I have new plumbing I got to put in. It's all union prevailing wage base, and then depending where your cores go. So there's going to be a lot of work that's going to go into it. So when you weigh it, Lincoln School, great school. I had similar projects at the same time, and I don't know somebody online who said, "Well, what's happened since?" Well, we've gone through 5 building codes since 2011. I 1999 projects through 2026 projects. I can outline them all for you. I can show you all the building code changes that have happened along the way that we need to comply with. I also can tell you that this project in particular is still seeking the baseline reimbursement plus the green initiative. That's 3 points plus 1 to be all electric and incredibly thermally enhanced, so you can take advantage of those points right now. If you want to drop the geothermal, which it's the IRA, we don't know where that's going to stand in the future, but a lot of projects are sticking with the past. If I was you, I would stick with the IRA, that it's going to stick around for the geothermal because it'll pay for itself. But yes, we have an enhanced thermal envelope, so you can get the additional 3+1% reimbursement. So when we look at new versus reno, we have to bring it all up to the same level.
Thank you. Greg and then Karina.
So just in terms of process, I think what I heard was a strong hope to eliminate B4. I think there's still conversation around new build or and reno, but I think strong pull around B4 is what was on the table.
Yeah, I mean, that could be an informal discussion if the room feels that, and I want to hear what Karina has to say first.
Yeah, what I wanted to say was that if we narrow it down to like two, we can find out how Durham is doing with their estimates and see if they can tell us what their preliminary construction cost is for those two options. It wouldn't be the full submission to the committee, but we can see if they're coming around the same price and we can let the committee know. But we would need to find out tomorrow where they are in their process. But that's definitely something we can do to try to ease everyone's minds in the meantime.
Thank you. Is there a consensus, or does anyone feel strongly about keeping B4 in for consideration? Is there a consensus to remove it, given that it was the lowest ranked? Any discussion, and particularly from someone who sees value in keeping it?
I mean, I like before, there's different elements that I liked of it, but I think we ultimately have to pick one. And if getting rid of 4, like I'm not gonna fall on the sword for 4. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not, you know what I mean? Like we have to ultimately get to 1. And if it's that lowly ranked, I don't think it's ever gonna come back to being number 1. So let's get rid of it so that we can just move on, kind of. But
does anyone feel strongly about preserving B4? And if I did a show of hands, does everyone feel like we could eliminate B4?
Speak up if you want to keep it.
Yeah, speak up if you want to keep it. Okay. So if we eliminate B4, it leaves us with a new build and an ad reno option.
Two ad
reno options. And those ranked identically on our heat map.
They both had their advantages and disadvantages, as you can see. For building placement, people thought B3 was more advantageous than B2. But then for parking and circulation, it's the opposite. They both ranked the highest on the educational scale, which everyone had that as a high priority. So it's like they scoring wise, they tie if you're looking at it as just a pure score, but both of them kind of had its advantages and disadvantages, as you can see on the heat map.
I think it would be interesting to hear from, if anybody's willing to speak up, who is undecided. What would be the data that you would need to receive to become decided? And if anyone's willing to speak to that, who's still kind of making up their mind between the new and the ad reno. We're decided, everyone's decided.
No.
I'm not decided,
I
yeah.
just keep kicking around.
Yeah.
Square footage and cost. I think it's kind of that simple. I don't know how much we can shrink the square footage. Then I guess Ken, you could help how quick does this then go that we don't have any say whatsoever? You know what I mean?
You always have,
Uh-huh.
you always gotta say.
I know.
Town meeting is.
Sometimes,
So-
no, I'm feeling like with the MSBA, the snowball starts rolling and we kind of.
And what, because I think this is important, in B1 and Reno, which design would you have more options to reduce the square footage?
Equally.
Equal.
So there's not more flexibility in one versus another.
As far as relating to reducing square footage, no. I think it just comes down to what you can do educationally, programmatically within the two options. So I think as Jennifer had shown, if you're retaining the 45,000 square feet, it's more your classrooms off of the loop hallway that you have at Lincoln, or it's looking at some of the recent MSBA schools that we toured where you're creating academic neighborhoods. I would say that's probably the biggest difference.
I'll say between B2 and B3. I was originally liked the site usage and layout for play areas, parking, configuration of B2 better because it was more compact. But I didn't like the kind of how it was blocking the front of the building. But with pulling that back, I think that addresses that. I kind of like B2 more than B3 because it does preserve the compactness of it and the play areas in the back. I also like that it puts the entrances and the admin, it keeps them in the front of the building. The entry, the exit from the cafeteria out to the playground, because that's really the one they're gonna use more often than the gym, is they're gonna go from lunch to recess. That makes a lot of sense to me. I like the pre-K and the K adjacent in the addition. I think that works well. So I would change my rankings a little bit between B2 and B3 to favor that updated B2 versus the B3. Because that addressed some of my hesitation in that. And keeps a nice site out back for the kids.
From a decision-making perspective and logistics, I would love it if we had two options that we could weigh pros, cons. If we're going to move to a final meeting for decision-making. Does the team have the appetite to whittle down tonight to two contenders or not?
I mean, if there's an
Tired?
appetite,
Yeah.
if there's an appetite, if the idea was to get to two, I agree, I'd like. My big hesitation with B2 was losing those windows. So the fact that those would not be lost and you would still be getting natural daylight in those classrooms. I definitely am more favorable to two than I was before tonight.
I would say, clearly, if we get to B1 and B2, I don't have a problem with that at all.
I mean, I'm more in favor of B3.
Because
I think B2 is gonna be logistically, I think if you thought Maple Street traffic was bad. Now, when B2 starts building in the front, unless you get that whole road around done and everything, I think like I like the idea of the construction equipment coming in from the rear. Through the DPW for B3,
So I thought that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we were talking about that. The details of it are still under negotiation, like, so we could put the thing around all the fields if we wanted to. And those types of things, but it was more of like the placement of the addition, like, do we want the addition to the south, do we want it to the north, do we want it? Like, that's what I thought, so I thought like, in the next phase, like, we could add.
Floor plan schematic between B3.
Yeah.
So you can modify, yes, it's like the addition in the front or the addition in the back, that's
I
really
thought
the
that's
biggest
what's
thing.
voting, and then like, because I agree with you, like, I really do like having DPW entrance exit, like.
So all of them may have to use that access if you're doing
You
like.
can still use DPW as a staging area, and they do a gravel road access road.
But the issue is just to the point like we brought up earlier, on B2, the addition is right in front of the existing school. And so you're going to have access off Maple Street. I mean, there, you know, maybe there's a way we come down, you know, out of DPW and loop around, but really that whole area where you see the addition and the parking from a contractor, if I was bidding it, I would want all that. And
I would just answer your point directly, Jake. To me, life has a certain amount of inconvenience, and if I'm not being cavalier, I can live with disruption if the end game is a much better product for the community. I mean, we all have inconvenience. I don't take it personally. Traffic sucks no matter where we are.
So I wonder with this option, if traffic would actually improve, because if you think about the current site of Peaslee and the space, the land space in the front, where cars kind of queue up in the front of the building along that horseshoe. I'd want to know how many cars queue up on that current horseshoe compared to what was.
My preliminary indication was 34.
Currently is 34?
I think
we had 800 linear feet of space that we need. Which we can verify.
But again,
what is it currently?
I think you'd have to look at it one day. Some days it's a lot more than others. 34 cars in a queue is a lot. But if 34 were on site, it really isn't.
I think the goal, and I think all of them achieve it, is getting the parents off Maple, right? So we have to take the baseline, and usually it's done within like a 15-minute increment, like how many cars are picking up now. Now drop off's easy, it's the pickup where maybe parents come early and they just kind of wait. So
We're also at preschool.
Yeah.
So there's.
And then you got the preschool, that's going to be a separate sequence.
But I agree, I think to Sean's point, like. It's gonna be shit for those months of construction, I don't think there's a way around it, like with anything, I mean, construction sucks, no matter what you do, where you go, so. You know, I agree with Sean, like, we gotta think of what's the end that we want.
Yeah, so I mean, if storage plays and queuing and parking, just to your point, Kelly, like, yes, the site plan, like, if you want to expand the site without, want to be light touch here, yeah, you can modify that, you could extend it above and have the play areas part of the school and not part of, you know, not crossing that, and then you eliminated then you get plenty of parents and buses and everybody off site. So that stuff, yes, you do have flexibility. I think for our purpose, we're really looking at B2 and B3, like in addition to the front, in addition to the back. You know, they're identical square footage. And I tried to make the floor plan identical just to make it easy.
Which.
Just for B2 and.
Rick, could you, are the start times for pre-K and K through 5 the same, or could you,
Could be staggered.
so that would help alleviate the.
No, I mean, for me, it was, you know, in addition to like the large, you know, the gym in the front of the building too, which is kind of something that to me is not, you know, how are we gonna make that look attractive? Because the gym generally does not have any windows. Except, yeah, it's gonna be a taller massing. How is that gonna play with your, you know, getting the proper amount of daylight in that 25-foot, you know, court? Is that's south facing, right?
That's south face. So basically that's gonna be blocked because.
So you're not gonna get a ton of daylight in that 25-foot gap between the existing building and the new building, the new addition, right? It's gonna be a shadow from the.
I think on B3 programmatically, it works better because like the gym has access to the fields and then the pre-K is off to its own.
I mean, that's when I saw this too, it's kind of what I was expecting.
This is your Lincoln kind of idea. And
It's a pre-K.
with your admin that's controlled for the main building down to the south, and then you can, whether the pre-K entrance there or somewhere else, you're able to, control that, and then your athletic facility has access to play areas.
Can you go back one more time or back to the other schematic? I'm sorry, I'm making you do this. Well, I mean, I guess in this one too, I was just thinking of, like isolating access for like weekend activities and things. They both work for that. Where you can close off portions of the school and people can still get in the gym. Because right now, when you go to Peaslee, we have Thursday basketball practice. It's a free for all. It's hard to get in the building, but there's nothing closing off the gym. So either one of these that works.
I think the benefit here is you're able to like hold the loop road tighter and get your play areas kind of as the buffer between the site and the DPW, similar to what you have now. But you do have a lot of if this is where you're going, you have a lot of program front loaded with a lot of different access points.
Yeah.
Off of maybe.
Mike,
Yeah, thanks. If we had to get down to one, I would be for B3. Just looking at the layout of it, one, you've got all your construction mostly in the back, right? It's not up front with Maple. That additional drive space, even though that may be more expensive, looks like you could probably, if we can get an exact number, but you're queuing cars up for pickup and separating them from the buses, right? The tighter that drive is, the more you may have an overlap between vehicles and buses trying to get out. You may be able to queue them all without them blocking, without them being there, so those buses can make the turns that they need to make to get out. The drive isn't separating the fields from the schools, right? So kids don't, even though there shouldn't be many cars going through during the day, but kids don't have to cross a street essentially or a drive to get to the outdoor play fields. Also on 3, your gym is by your outdoor play fields, right? If your gym is all the way up front and your play fields are all in the back, right? They've got to walk either outside or through the school to go back and forth or do an activity outside or inside or what have you. And then again, 2, I like the idea of they'd be creating that space so you would have that natural light for those classrooms in the front, but it is still sort of space to nowhere, right? It's just going to be a small courtyard area. You won't have direct light getting in, nor maybe a breeze, right? That would be able to come through the window. You are kind of blocking that. And again, it's just kind of empty space where, again, you couldn't sort of get out that way if you had to, and therefore in those classrooms. So for kind of all those things that have bounced around in my head, if we had to narrow it down to one right now, I'd be for B3.
thank you, Mike. It seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's 9:00. It seems like we might need a second meeting. Is there an objection to meeting a week from today? Does that exclude anyone?
What's that?
That would exclude me.
Oh, no, Rob. I think that if I work with Rob offline to get your input prior to the meeting, then we reassemble the team to narrow with fresh eyes a week from today.
Could you do a different time on the 9th? Or nothing on the 9th?
No, I'm 100% booked from pretty much 6 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. So unfortunately, the 9th would be out for me. As would be the 10th and 11th and 12th. Okay. Sorry.
All right, so Rob, Rob, I can work with you offline. I mean, we could try the 8th, which is a Monday. Does the 8th work for you, Rob?
It does not. I'm sorry.
The 8th wouldn't work for me. I have select board and we're interviewing candidates for fire chief.
Okay, so the 9th.
Is there a process where if Rob has made up his mind
Yes.
before the meeting, he can enter his vote in absentia?
Yep,
Maybe give us his pros and cons of
yeah, I
his
think,
week.
yeah,
I'll fill out an absentee ballot.
Thank you.
all right, so then, if it pleases this body, I would move through the remainder of the agenda and plan to reconvene, a week from today. There are no invoices to review and approve.
That
Is
is
that
correct.
right, Bob?
That is correct.
Subcommittee reports, we have 2 subcommittee chairs in the room. I'll turn it over to you.
Can me, well, me,
Sure.
we've been busy. We've gotten word out, the survey's closed officially. We have one more, well, a couple more scheduled things, the Dullman's Group, next Wednesday, we're gonna present, some ideas to them. And then the end of school fair on, June 25th at Ellsworth Kathy Field. We'll do kind of like a tent and kind of like basically what we did at Election Day. Just get out. and learn from people.
Thank you. Thanks for all your efforts and everyone who came to the community forum.
Yeah.
Here, Adjourn. Kevin,
And the only update on the design subcommittee is that we have a meeting this Friday at 9 a.m.
thank you. Any new business from committee members? And hearing none, I would now open this meeting for public comment with a reminder that you'll state your name and address and limit your comments if you would to 3 minutes. Hearing none, I'll close public comment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Kristen moved and Sean seconded to adjourn this meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, take a vote by roll call, starting with Lauren Bailey.
Oh, she had to step out, she's gone.
Rob,
Yes.
Mike,
Aye.
Kristen, Kate,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and I say yes. Thank you all for tonight. The meeting's adjourned at 9:08 p.m.
Thank you all.
Thank you.